Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever the fuck you're tuning in. This is our final regular season. Technically, the Army Navy game hasn't been played yet. That's kind of a special circumstance. But this is our last regular season episode of Tailgate Trash Talk, brought to you by Backyard Sports. I got Bentley with me tonight, and we got a big SMU fan in the house, apparently, huh?
Yeah, it took me 14 weeks, but I'm all the way on board, dude. I'm like, Kevin Jennings, you have won me over. I love the Mustangs, dude. I love the
Yes, yes.
Mustangs.
It can't have anything to do with who they play this weekend or anything,
Yeah,
huh?
why? How would that?
Right,
The
right, right.
season ended, Gary. What are you talking? There's no more games left. I don't understand. You just said it. The final season. I don't like the final week.
Yeah, we only got a
For all
little
in,
while for college basketball to start too, right?
I was gonna say potentially college basketball season starting tonight. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's
We'll see.
pending still.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, let's jump into it, man. Let's get into week 14 here, and we start out the gate. We had a rough week after the good week last week that you had,
Oh.
especially. Rough week this week. You were 500. I was just below 500, but we stayed over 500 on the regular season. However, Old Faithful came out and laid an egg for us right out the gate.
Mhm.
Tulane not only didn't cover, they didn't win against Memphis. Talk to me a little bit about this. I didn't catch a ton of this game. I was traveling with some family
Mhm.
while this game was going on. So I'm curious to get your take on this, because looking at like the recap and the highlights, Tulane just never really got things going, and that defense had no answer for that Memphis offense.
Yeah, Memphis did everything they possibly could to take the ball out of the air and keep Tulane's offense off the field. Tulane rushed for 57 yards in this game, like total, not just one player. Their entire team rushed for 57 yards. Mensa had a pretty good game, slinging the rock around. Darian, like he averaged almost 10 yards of completion, like that. Threw for 300 plus. That's pretty good. But the biggest story of this game to me personally, it was Mario Anderson, the running back for the University of Memphis. He ran for 177 yards, and I think he only scored once on the ground, but whatever. Regardless, 177 yards and a touchdown. Shout out to him. Special place in my heart for this kid. University of South Carolina transfer. Goes over to Memphis and puts it on our Tulane Green Wave. It's always nice to see kids coming from the program, going other places and thriving, even if it does cost us a couple dollars on the old app. But 9-3 to close out the season for Tulane against the spread. We will take that. Coming off a 10-2 year from them. I mean, a trend in the wrong direction, but yeah, the biggest takeaway I had from that Tulane game was it was far better than any of the NFL games on Thanksgiving. So that was awesome.
Very true.
But it was just a show of force by the Memphis run game. They, like I said, they took all the air out of the ball, and you said it. Tulane's offense never really got going. They were kind of playing from behind the sticks, behind the 8 ball the entire game, and they just weren't able to ever get into a flow.
Yeah, and I think the biggest number from this game really is 48. That's how many times Memphis ran the ball in this game.
Yeah.
You mentioned they took the air out of the football against a Tulane team that, for all intents and purposes, should have been as heavily favored as they were at 13.5. They just, when you don't have the ball, you can't score points. Memphis was very careful with the ball as well. They didn't turn it over and give Tulane opportunities to run the score back up on them. But hey, Dad, thanks for joining. But yeah, rough start to the week, rough finish to the season for Tulane. I talked about it last week in terms of like their 2 losses being to ranked opponents. Maybe they could have kind of had an outside shot at a playoff spot, but not anymore. After that loss, they're not even ranked after that loss to Memphis either. Yeah. So they've got an opportunity to turn around. We'll talk about them against Army here in just a moment, but onward, upward. Boise against Oregon State. Boise was in control the whole way. 19 just ended up being too many. That's really what it boiled down to. And that's really the only reason I picked Oregon State. 19 just felt like too many. Oregon State is a bad team, but not terrible. They're kind of scrappy. For what they went through in the transfer portal and the Pac-12 fallout from last year, I have to tip my cap to them. They didn't quit on the season. Played a tough Boise team, but 19 ended up being too many. Genty looked phenomenal as always. He's that guy. He's not going to win the Heisman, which is weird. I have a question for you before we talk too much about before we get back to the Boise game.
Okay.
Is it disrespectful that Travis Hunter is not a finalist for either the Thorpe or the Biletnikoff Award? Because he's top 5 in the nation in like every stat counting category at both positions. Is he like should he not be a finalist? Do you think he's that like I felt it was disrespectful that he's not a finalist in the fucking Thorpe Award. Like
no, if anything, he'd be finalist in the Biletnikoff. He's 5th in the nation in receiving yards.
Sure.
After being in the game up 31 points in the 4th quarter and having Shedeur force feed him the ball.
That's fair. But
he is 15th in the country in interceptions with 4.
Yeah, that's right. He's top 15, not top 5.
Yeah.
But he's fucking all over the board. I don't know. But whatever.
So if you want to talk me into him being a finalist for the Biletnikoff, sure. I can live with that. Finalist for the Thorpe Award, we've said it multiple times on the show. The best cornerbacks in football do not get thrown at. Travis Hunter is not that guy on the defensive side of the ball. Is he very good? Absolutely. Is he a shutdown, lockdown corner? No. People still throw the ball his direction. We saw Utah hit him for a 43-yard touchdown. Like, Zach Wilson's brother threw that ball. I mean, he may have been staring at the woman in the stands behind Travis, but he still hit that ball for 43 yards in a tug. Like, I don't think it's – I did this spiel last week. I don't think I'm being disrespectful in saying that he should not win the Heisman. I do think it's a little strange that he's not a Biletnikoff finalist. I'm cool with him not being a Jim Thorpe Award finalist. He's an incredible football player. He's an even more incredible athlete than he is football player. He just so happens to play both sides of the ball. That's awesome. Good for you, man. Go to fucking Alabama. You know who's not going to let you do that? That program down there. Kalen DeBoer is not going to have you playing both sides of the ball. I can assure you of that. You were the number one recruit in the country. You went to a program that paid you a shitload of money to go to an HBCU, and they said, hey, you're the best fucking player out here. Go ahead and play both sides. And then you move from that HBCU to the Big 12, and they said, hey, you're still the best athlete on our team. Why don't you play both sides? Like, he went to the perfect situation in order for him to be able to showcase the talent that he has on both sides of the ball. Just because he's not elite at both of them, it's not a disrespectful thing to say, in my opinion.
Do you know where he ranks by PFF's rankings at the cornerback position?
They probably have him like top 8.
He's third.
Third?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know who he's ahead of? He's ahead of every finalist for the position awards. It's just I don't know. I found it weird because I watch him week in and week out, and he takes some chances and does get beat, but he's also a guy that I don't know makes a lot of plays. Anyway, back to the game at hand because Colorado doesn't figure into the top 25 or the college football playoff here after their abysmal performance against Kansas. Boise State, however, Ashton Genty is phenomenal. You and I are in lockstep. I think he should be the Heisman winner. I don't know what the problem. I guess it is the two-way thing. Charles Woodson won it.
Charles Woodson was not a two-way player. I don't care what people say.
He played some on offense. He
had like 7 catches on the season.
Yeah.
He was a two-way player if you count special teams and defense. That's fine.
Sure.
Is Peguias, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss, a two-way player?
No.
Because he has like 5 rushing touchdowns on the season.
I know.
Like, he's not – Charles Woodson, phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Do not get twisted. Not a two-way player.
Yeah. They snuck him on the offensive side of the ball for that reason, to chase the Heisman.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, Boise State finishes with a strong performance against Oregon State. Just don't cover the 19. Onward to said competitor for the Heisman Trophy. Where was Oklahoma State during this game?
Cancun, maybe?
I think so, right? Like
they might have just stayed in Stillwater.
This was a very confounding performance for me because you and me and the rest of the country watched Kansas run up and down the field like where was Ollie Gordon? And I know, like, you get behind early and the game script changes, but up to that point, he had not touched the ball.
Yeah. They were down, I think it was 21 points by the time they were in their 10th offensive possession or something like that.
They turned the ball over like crazy.
It was insane. Just not in the game script, but like the game script at Oklahoma State this year should have just been give Ollie Gordon the ball no matter what. By the way, they're getting their quarterback back for an 8th season of eligibility. It's also National Signing Day right now for those who are keeping track at home. A lot of flips coming into the University of South Carolina, but whatever. We're not talking about them right now. We're talking about Colorado.
It happens when you're hot as fish grease to finish the season.
Yeah. It was rivalry week. Colorado doesn't really have a rival. Like maybe if the season had gone differently, Nebraska could have been a rival, like a super throwback. The Dylan Raiola and then the Travis Hunter and Shedeur on the other side. Like that might have been something they could have developed. But because they didn't have a rival, I think that Colorado wanted to come out and kind of put on a show, And like I mentioned earlier, they had Shedeur throwing the ball to Travis Hunter up 31 points in the fourth quarter. Like that's not a game your starter should still be in if you're up 31-0 and you want to like make an actual bowl game, unless this was the last game we're going to see them play in and they're going to sit out the bowl to get ready for the draft, right? Put some final things on tape.
Yeah, did come out and say his guys are going to play, but I don't know that that's going to apply to everybody.
Yeah. There may be a couple general managers saying, hey, buddy, don't do that.
Can you not put Shedeur in? Can you not put Travis in?
Yeah, can you not play your boys? Really just like 2 of them? Everybody else is fine.
Right.
Juju is now committed. Like, can he graduate high school early and play in your bowl game for you?
Yeah, right.
I know he hasn't been on campus more than 12 hours, but still. Yeah. No, I think this game was truly about Colorado trying to put on a show, making that final push for Travis Hunter to win the Heisman, and just the end of a fucking abysmal season for Oklahoma State. Like it was. I understand that there were a lot of disappointing seasons around the country, or there are a few disappointing seasons, right? Florida State was really disappointing. Florida, they really turned it around. So I guess not them. I don't know. There were like Southern Cal had a disappointing season, Michigan, obviously. But honestly, the most disappointing of all of them might have been Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
What, do they win 1 conference game this year?
Yeah.
I mean, that you bring back Ollie Gordon, it's like, geez, dude, you can't do anything.
What were they? They were around 20 to start the season.
Yeah, something like that.
Ollie Gordon was supposed to be the guy.
Mm-hmm. After it honestly all kind of went downhill after that Arkansas game. Yeah. Like they played that overtime game with Arkansas, and then the season just kind of crashed and tumbled.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Onward, the Egg Bowl. Mississippi beats Mississippi State. Ole Miss beats Mississippi State. Doesn't cover the 26. Again, this was kind of like the Oregon State number. 26 was just too many. I'd been burned a lot by Mississippi State this year, though, so I kind of expected Ole Miss to roll, but they didn't. Mississippi State doesn't burn me finally in week 14. Lane and boys, I half expected them to try to make a statement. Maybe they did try, and Mississippi State was just pesky enough to keep them from really running up the score in terms of them trying to make a bid at that last playoff spot. It felt like it was really a 3-team race. We found out from the committee it was apparently a 4-team race for whatever fucking reason. But Ole Miss couldn't put quite enough on the board to really make a statement in this game.
Yeah, Ole Miss, the team that I think should have come in ranked 12th this week instead of instead of Miami, but whatever. Ole Miss is confounding. I said to you probably, was it 3 weeks ago, that I think they're just the best team in the country. And top to bottom, they might be, right? With the offensive line issues at Ohio State. Obviously, they faltered this weekend, and we'll get to that. But, like, the Ole Miss team, they went out and spent all this money. They have an incredible defensive line. They have a really good wide receiver room, even if you include Juice Wells. Jackson Dart, maybe my favorite quarterback coming out of college this year. Lane Kiffin, for all his faults, Lane Franklin, for all of his faults, he still knows how to call like an offensive game, right? He's a proven offensive play caller. 26 was a lot. You're right. I picked a lot of favorites this week, which was foolish of me. I should have just known rivalry, take the underdogs. But yeah, they tried to put on a show and it just didn't work. Pesky, those pesky Bulldogs down there, man. They hung around.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of rivals that we should have taken the underdog for, Georgia Tech, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how we're not talking about a Georgia Tech upset. Yeah, because they're up 3 scores with like 5 minutes to go. It was a little over 5 minutes, and I know in college, especially when you get close to 2 minutes, when the clock starts stopping after a first down, that can be an eternity. The game moves at a higher pace because of just kind of how open the game is with the wide hash marks, etc. But man, if I'm Georgia Tech, I feel real shitty that we didn't come out of that with a win. 8 overtimes. I still think the worst decision college football ever made was making it 2-point conversions from three overtimes on. I hate it. I can't stand watching it just 2-point conversion after 2-point conversion. I understand why they did it, right? I'm not faulting them for their logic for doing it. I fucking hate it. I can't stand watching 2-point conversions like that, and it's just such a crapshoot. But hats off to Kirby and company. Like, you could have easily, late in that game, known you had the SEC championship ahead of you and just kind of folded up shop and let it be. They played tough, came back, and eventually in like the 5th overtime, Kirby decided, fuck it, we're just going to start blitzing everybody on every fucking 2-point try for Georgia Tech. And Tech didn't really have an answer. Eventually, Georgia was able to get one to stick and made a stop against Georgia Tech. It's 7:19 here on the East Coast, and despite coming back and beating Georgia Tech, Carson Beck is still not a good quarterback. He was a fucking mess for about 55 minutes of this game.
Yeah, Georgia lucked out on this one, man. Watching it, like the DBs just kept dropping for Georgia Tech. I mean, they were down to like 4th string corners out there. The heart and soul of that defense, Big 44, the linebacker got hurt at one point in the red zone. It's like, how much can they withstand, right, from Georgia? How much of a beating? And they hung in it, dude. Haynes King, absolute dog. The huge performance by him on the road there at Sanford Stadium. Couple of takeaways on my perspective, or from my perspective on this game. How can you stand on the sidelines or sit in the booth if you're the offensive play caller and watch that game unfold the way that it did? Haynes King ran for 100-plus yards, made every correct decision possible, known to man in that game. And then you get into overtime and you're like, hey, you know what we're going to do? Drop back pass. That didn't work all the night. Every pass that he completed down the field was an option, right? Like it was an RPO, and he would make the correct decision, pull it, and hit a big gainer down the field. Why the fuck are you not doing that in overtime? Like four 2-point tries in a row, they were just straight drop back pass. I'm like, what? That makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't like. He's made all the right decisions. Put the ball in his hand and let him tuck it and run.
We were talking about that in real time. Like, what are they thinking?
Just didn't make any sense.
Nope.
I know we haven't gotten to the bracket yet, but what made even less sense to me is Georgia played at home against an unranked team, was down 2 scores going into the 4th quarter, and went to 8 overtimes and moved up 2 spots in the college football ranking. There's another team who played a rivalry game this weekend, went on the road to what seemed like a less hostile environment than maybe it was. It didn't seem very loud on TV, but Death Valley in Spartansburg, South Carolina, was silent at the end of that game. South Carolina beat 12th ranked Clemson and moved up 1 spot. I'm not like the best at math numbers. Like every once in a while, they'll get the best of you. But I think a win in regulation on the road against a 12th ranked team probably should mean more than a win at home in 8 overtimes against an unranked team. That just look. I'm not saying South Carolina should have been in the playoff, but I'm saying they should have at least moved higher than Georgia moved. Like, yeah, whatever. Hey, whatever. Strange takeaways from the weekend. That's all.
Yeah, we'll talk CFP here in a minute. I have some thoughts and some gripes as we get closer to the final selection, but yeah, just anyway, onward. We'll talk about that in a minute. Maybe the most embarrassing loss that I can remember in my lifetime. I had a hard time thinking of other like more embarrassing losses. Like I remember ULM got Auburn one year and it was like a 31 point, but that's like week one. I think it was like week 1 or 2 of the season. The App State win over Michigan. Like there's some games that you can look at and say like that's a big deal, right? This 21 point favorites. It ended up closing at like 23 and a half, I believe, on Saturday. And they don't have a quarterback. They don't have Will Johnson. Yep. They don't have Loveland. Like they're missing their best offensive and best defensive players.
Yep.
They don't have a quarterback. We've talked about that. We've chronicled that throughout the year that they really don't have a quarterback. It's not a situation where like if you have 2, you have none. This is like if you have none, you have none because they don't have one. The big story is them going out and getting Underwood with everybody else's money that they could fucking pool together because they know the quarterback situation is so dire. Yet Ryan Day and company go and lay the biggest of fucking eggs in the horseshoe against their biggest rival in a game that they have for 5 years now said we have to get this game, and they can't. They just can't beat Michigan. I don't understand the game plan, the play calling, like 3rd and 8 at your own 30, I think it was, or own 35, something like that. They hand the fucking ball off at one point. Like, are we just forfeiting the game? Or Will Howard was not great. He looked very, very choppy in this game. I thought Chip Kelly called a terrible game. They didn't really control the line of scrimmage the way that like Ryan Day after the game was like, oh, I thought we did a good job controlling the line of scrimmage. We just didn't capitalize on opportunities. I don't know what he was looking at. It's clear to me that he wasn't maybe in the stadium. He may have been there in body, but not in mind, because even after the game, when the brawl's happening, he's like, oh, what happened? Like asking his players, what happened? They planted a fucking flag on your 50, bro. And now there's pepper spray. Yeah. Get with the fucking program. I just can't think of a scenario that's more embarrassing than this because of what this game means and the fact that you're now 1-5, I believe, is Ryan Day's record against Michigan in his time as the coach at Ohio State. Not good, man. Not good. And they may go on and win a national championship, and he might still get fired the day after.
I don't think that will happen.
I don't either, but this game means so much to these two schools.
Yeah. I would pose that Clemson South Carolina is a better rivalry, but whatever, that's just me. I had a Michigan fan tell me he didn't know that Clemson and South Carolina were rivals. He thought that Clemson was in Georgia, so that shows you the education of a Michigan man. Regardless, this is obviously the game. It's a big fucking deal.
What are they learning up there in Ann Arbor?
Not much. Just how to beat Ohio State, apparently.
Yeah.
And 2 of those years were by cheating, and then last year they won the national title, so obviously that was deserved, but it was at home. Like, whatever. I can caveat all of the wins recently from Michigan if I have to. But they came out and they dominated on the defensive line. And that's what they had to do because that's the weak spot in Ohio State's entire armor. That's the chink in their armor, right? Is that offensive line. And it's simply due to injuries. It's not because the players are bad. It's because they're young and they haven't played together a whole lot. Now, you'll remember last year after the Notre Dame-Ohio State game where Lou Holtz said that, or I guess before the game, Lou Holtz said that Ryan Day and that Ohio State team are soft. And they beat Notre Dame. And he said, I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now, or something like that. I would like to know where Lou Holtz is right now as well after watching that Ohio State Michigan game, because everything he said about Ryan Day and that Ohio State team was correct.
Spot on.
They made foolish decisions. You mentioned the 3rd and 8 on their own side of the field where they handed the ball off. I get that Will Howard was not sharp and didn't play super well. But hey, guess what, bud? You have a kid named Jeremiah Smith who probably is going to win the Heisman Trophy next year. Like, he's the best. He's one of the best receivers in college football this year, and he's a true freshman. Now, he may have cost you the Oregon game, but every time you get a resetting of the sticks, you should throw the ball to him at least once. Whether it's a bubble screen, a jet sweep, a deep shot, a crossing pattern, but he should get a target every single time you get a first down. And they just didn't do that.
Nope.
Cordell Tate was the leading receiver for Ohio State in this game. That made no sense to me. Will Johnson was not even there to just blanket J.J. Smith. Like, why are you not throwing him the ball? I don't understand. They wanted to come out and prove a point that says, hey, we are tougher than Michigan. We're going to dominate the line of scrimmage and run the ball all over them. And it's like, dog, that just ain't happening. And you have to make adjustments. Now, to be fair to Ohio State, as a fan of a team who is 2 missed kicks away from being in the college football playoff, Ohio State did miss 2 field goals.
Yeah.
That would have been game changers, right? You lose by 3, you leave 6 points on the field, that's a dub. If you make those 2 field goals, you win the game.
Yeah.
But college kickers, we all know about them.
Yeah.
They
taxes and college kickers.
So I keep bringing it back to Carolina, and I really hate to, but like, I'm a homer if nothing else, you know what I'm saying? And I've talked multiple times on the show about Mitch Jeter being the most accurate kicker in college football for the last 3 seasons when he played at South Carolina. I saw a screenshot after I looked it up, but I saw the screenshot. Alex Herrera, the kicker for South Carolina this year, is kicking at a 75.7% conversion rate, which, sure, whatever. Like, that's pretty good for college kicker. Mitch Jeter this year, kicking for Notre Dame, is kicking at a 50% rate. So, yeah.
It's tough.
You know, grass ain't always greener, bud.
Nope.
But yeah, college kickers, it was not the 2 missed kicks that cost this game for Ohio State. It may look like it on the scoreboard. You say you leave 6 points on the field, but it was not those missed kicks that caused Ohio State to lose. It was bad offensive play calling and just timely mistakes, right? Or untimely mistakes. The Will Howard red zone turnover. He threw 2 picks, one of them deep in the red zone when they were going in. Like, those are backbreakers, and it broke their back.
That was an ugly ass throw too. Like, he just like he didn't believe that the DB was actually there. Right? Like, no,
Winston throw.
Yeah, it was a James throw. I'm gonna throw it through him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is tough. Ohio State is still in the playoff. They're still in contention. They're gonna likely host a first round game here. But man, it was not great. If I were Tennessee, I'd be pretty pissed that I might have to go on the road and play Ohio State after they lost to fucking Michigan. Right? Like, our resume is better than theirs.
Ohio State is still going to win the national title. I'm sticking by that pick.
They might. It's the most
talented
team in college football.
Yep.
And there's a pretty big gap between them and the field.
And you talk about Ryan Day getting fired.
Yeah.
There are 400 schools in the country that would line up to hire Ryan Day tomorrow if that man got fired. Ryan Day is not a bad football coach. He just has a Michigan problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
this is
maybe.
You talked about
also he's 1-4. He's won 1 of 5. He's not 1 and 5.
Yeah. The COVID year took one away. 2019 is the last time he beat.
Yeah, because he has been coached for 6 years, but they've only played 5 times.
Yeah. Also, do you know the only player for the Ohio State 2021 recruiting class to beat Michigan?
I just saw this the other day.
You'll kick yourself.
It's not MHJ, is it?
No. It's a college football player. Currently we're about to talk about him.
He transferred, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it yours?
Yeah.
And he wasn't even playing in that game.
It was this year. Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Ryan Day, this is the only bad
oh,
loss
that's
in
right.
his
He
career.
beat him earlier this year, and that's
Yep.
his only win. He didn't even beat him at Ohio State.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, good
Yep.
Lord. That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Ryan Day will be fine. He's not getting fired.
Yeah.
Unless,
If they lose first
if
round, I think
he might be out.
you can't lose 4 straight to Michigan and not produce in the playoff. I think he might be gone if they do. And I think he'll land on his feet somewhere. I agree with you. I think he's also one of the few college coaches that really embraces that CEO role.
Yep.
Which is what you need in the current NIL era. So I think he'll be fine, but he really does have a Michigan problem, a huge fucking Michigan problem.
And it's not going to get any better. Like, this is the worst Michigan team.
They have a quarterback next year.
Potentially. Freshman.
Well,
relax. He's no Lenore Sellers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They have what they expect to be a quarterback next year. Oh, onward. Tennessee, Vanderbilt. I thought Vandy would keep this closer. They did keep it close, just not close enough for the 10.5 point spread. I had this as one of my 4 super dog upsets of the weekend. Only one of them hit. Not to spoil the results of the other 2 that we'll be talking about coming up, but the one that did hit might be the sweetest of all. However,
Yes.
Vandy did not. We needed Vandy for South Carolina. Didn't happen. Tennessee looks fine. I don't know that they're really a threat though in the playoff. They're still kind of choppy on offense. Run the ball more, maybe. I don't know what the answer is yet for Tennessee. It might truly just be that like Nico needs another offseason to fix some of the issues that they identify on film this year. But it's choppy on offense for them. A lot choppier than we've come to know of the Josh Heupel Tennessee offense with, Hendon Hooker especially, who could probably teach a master class on the Josh Heupel offense.
Yeah, for sure. Tennessee is a team that gets out to slow starts. Like, they've kind of done that all year long, and they play with their food a little bit.
Yep.
It happened again this week against Vandy, but the talent just kind of took over. They started clicking on offense, and they looked fine by the end of the game.
Yep.
As long as they don't do that in the playoff, they could win 2 games probably because they have the talent to do so. But if they come out slow out of the gates against some of these teams, they're going to be in for a long night.
Yeah, for sure. The big game of the weekend, Clemson, South Carolina. I did have a money line ticket in on them, so I appreciate the boys in Columbia cashing one for me.
Yeah.
South Carolina beats Clemson in a big rivalry game, a game that I thought should have propelled them to that last playoff spot, in my opinion. I'm going to save my thoughts for when we talk about the college football playoff bracket. But this was a big win, man. This is the thing that like programs can hang their hat on, a feather in the cap for a budding program here. I don't know how many people would have had South Carolina in the top 15, in the preseason. But the reality is that they are one of the 15 best, and in my opinion, one of the 12 best teams in the country this year. Beamer's got them going in the right direction, man. And I know, you're keeping a close eye on their recruiting class, but I know that they are having a very, very good recruiting cycle here. We'll see what the transfer portal looks like, but as far as the incoming freshman class, they're having a very, very solid recruiting cycle. And building on a win like this against your rival, who was the number 12 team in the country at the time, that's a big deal.
Yeah, we said all year long Clemson's issue was not on the defensive side of the ball. And I think they showed that this week, right? There wasn't an offense in college football, at least in teams that mattered really, that was playing better than the South Carolina team coming into the week, right? And they really shut them down, right? It was the first time in 5 weeks that I was really nervous every time I saw Lenoris drop back. He obviously remedied that by just being Superman and running through entire defenses. 3rd and 16 for the game-winning touchdown. But
put on the cape.
Yeah, he still, to me, I came out of this game being reminded that he is still a freshman and there are holes in this passing offense for South Carolina, right? We still lack a couple of the explosive guys that we need outside of
I
Rocket
think it's
Sanders.
playmakers, man. I think
Yeah.
a couple more guys on the outside, you guys would be a threat.
Yeah, but like, for as worried as I am about Lenoris every time he drops back, he reminds me that there is still so much upside with him.
Oh.
That if he's able to figure out the passing game at all, and he had a great passing game with Josh Simon, the tight end we have, who's unfortunately going to be gone, but we brought in another 4-star tight end last season in Michael Smith, and we brought in a 3-star tight end already today on National Signing Day. Like, if he's just a guy who throws the tight end, we can make that work in college football. And then you hit Gage Larvadae, you hit Nick Harbor deep. Like, the offense will be fine going forward with Lenore Sellers playing quarterback. And he proved that to us this week, going on the road, beating a top 12 team with a very good defense. And then our defense stepped up when it needed to, right? We kind of held their offense in check. Kate Klubnik played all right. He didn't play great. He had like a Sellers game, He just is not the athlete that Sellers is.
Yeah.
He ran the ball a little bit, and then nut crunch of time, he threw a pick. Maybe not his fault. It wasn't a great throw, and it got tipped. But, like, that's a moment where if you are going to make a playoff push, and Clemson still has a chance to make it, unfortunately, you have to go down and win that game because you're at home. They were already in field goal position, which, by the way, how the fuck do we stifle their offense all day long, and then they come out needing to get in the field goal range, and we let them march right down to the 30?
It's always weird, ain't it?
I'm like, Doug, what are we?
Don't change anything.
That's what I'm saying. It made no sense. Some of
Pucker
our
factor, man. The pucker factor.
Yeah, and we got the defense turned around because some of the wide receivers got loose early, but then like late in the game, our secondary kind of got it in gear and figured out how to shut down that passing game. But I don't know. This was such like an emotional roller coaster for me. We get behind the sticks, and then Lodoris would make a play, and I'd be all excited, and then it would happen again. But Arrow up in South Carolina right now. I'm obviously bummed we didn't make the playoff, but I've come to peace with it after 24 hours now. Arrow up, dude. Anytime you beat your rival at their place, that's a big win, and I'm super excited for this program going forward. Shane Beamer just passed Steve Spurrier for the most wins in the first 3 years of the program. That's not nothing. For those of y'all who know much, I love Steve Spurrier. It's not nothing to see that record taken down. Yeah, I love that team, dude. This team is awesome. I'm excited to watch them play one more time. Arrow all the way up for us.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, actually, SJ's a new viewer of the program. He jumped on last night on the Blitz. Good to see you again tonight, buddy. Yeah, Lenoris only being 19 is wild, being a freshman. Yeah, for sure. Ty's got a question, and we're going to talk a little CFP before we get to officially talking about the bracket because we got a question that came in. Ty, we're going to talk about kind of the whole scope of the CFP in just a moment, but we'll jump into this because this ties into the conversation. So Bama jumps Miami for the 12th spot. Miami fell from, I think there were 9 before the loss to Syracuse, and they dropped to 12, and they dropped out of the CFP because of Arizona State and or Iowa State being behind them in the Big 12, and the anticipation is that the Big 12 champion would move over a team ranked ahead of them because top 5 conference champions, yada yada. However you feel about that, that's the reality of this year's college football playoff. So Bama jumps to 11, Miami falls to 12, and Miami is on the outside looking in right now. I'll let you answer this first. Do you agree with Bama jumping Miami, or do you think this is kind of that whole money and it's the SEC, ESPN, yada yada? How do you feel about that?
So this is tough, right? I think that Syracuse is a better football team than is Oklahoma. Syracuse beat Miami in a very close game, kind of a weird decision to not go for it on 4th and goal from the 8, down 7 with like 3 minutes to go. I don't really understand that. You
hadn't made a stop all night.
Yeah, like that didn't really make any sense. But then you look on the other side, right? And last weekend, or the week prior, week 14, Alabama gets smoked by Oklahoma, right? And that's kind of the last we see of them outside of the Iron Bowl, which wasn't really a close competition or whatever, but like also a home game. So the lasting impressions of the season for me will be Alabama losing to Oklahoma and Miami losing a close game to Syracuse on the road. So for my money, I would put Miami in over Alabama, right? One fewer loss. Their offense is just more explosive. It simply is, right? I understand their strength of schedule is not great. Their strength of record is not really that great. But, like, they did schedule Florida, which is an SEC team, on the road early in the season, right? So we can't look at these schedules ahead of the season and predict that they're going to be as tough or as weak as they will by the time we know at the end of the year, right? We just don't know that. You look at Indiana's schedule because a lot of people are talking about them. Well, they played Michigan, they played Washington, and they played Ohio State. Like, those are three. Michigan just won a national title, and Washington played in that title game.
Right.
You can't know going into it how good or bad these teams are going to be, and that's the problem, right? So I would have put Miami in because I think going into the beginning of the year, they were like, well, they have a tough SEC program, and then they're going to play a Louisville team. They're going to play, the Syracuse team who you were super high on all year long. It's not like they were playing nobody. It just happens to look that way at the end of the season, but you can only play the teams that are in front of you. And they won 10 of those games, and they lost 2 of those games. It just so happened they lost the biggest one at the end of the season, which is unfortunate for them. But, like, I don't know what the committee's criteria is because they've just thrown it all out of whack. I know that they value the number of losses more than they value, like, who you lost to and when you lost that game. And because of that, I would have put Miami in because they have one fewer loss than Alabama.
Yep. So I'm going to take the contrarian side because it's good TV on this. And also I'm going to say I agree with you 100% on – I don't know what the CFP's fucking criteria are. That's my biggest issue. On December 4th, the day after they released this, penultimate, like they also came on and said, like, nothing really is going to change, which is fucking dumb to me. Conference championship games either matter or they don't. If they don't matter, then we need to get rid of that top 5 champions being guaranteed a spot, right? Don't tell me they matter, but then tell me in the rankings that they don't matter, because I'm going to tell you right now, and I don't want to get too far into, because this is going to spoil a bit of my fucking peeve with what the CFP committee chairman said last night on TV. But if Clemson goes and beats SMU, South Carolina has one of the best wins of the season.
Yep.
Because you're telling me that a conference championship matters.
Yep.
So why isn't South Carolina in over Alabama, who lost to Oklahoma, who lost to 2 unranked teams?
Yeah.
In one of them, they got beat by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say I do agree that Bama should be in over Miami for the reasons that you mentioned. Miami's strength of schedule, strength of record. I think the ACC is not a very good conference this year. It's why I was high on Syracuse, because of the way their schedule fell and who they played and didn't play in the ACC. You don't run the same gauntlet that you do in the SEC. Alabama's record against the current CFP top 25 on the season is 4-1 or 4-2. I can't remember exactly how it shook out. And Miami's is 0-2. So that's kind of where I think there's the big difference between them. Miami's had 2 opportunities to show the committee that they're one of the 12 best teams in the country, and in both cases they faltered, whereas Bama has had an opportunity to show that they are one of the best teams in the country, and they have not faltered. It's just a weird year that we see Bama lose to unranked teams, because we talked about the stat. Like, Nick Saban was like 172-2 against unranked teams, or 172-1, and that one was like in his first season or whatever it was against unranked teams, and they've lost 2 of them this year. So it is a very strange year for Bama, but Bama also beat Georgia, who we see what the committee thinks of them. And they beat South Carolina, who sits right behind them in the CFP rankings. Like, I can talk myself into Bama over Miami because of that. I will say, we're going to talk about it in a moment, I don't agree that Bama should be one of the top 12 teams. I don't agree that Bama should be in the bracket. I'm going to save the rest of that spiel for here in a moment when we talk about the CFP.
Yeah, I have more thoughts on the conference championship mattering and them not changing teams after, because Penn State comes into play.
Yes,
if that's a factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, come on. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in a moment. But good question, Ty. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Lenore's, by the way, Jay made the comment that Lenore's
Yeah.
is only 19. We also just signed his brother to come play for us to play wide receiver, who is not yet 18.
Yeah. There's
gonna be two of them
falling in fun places. I can imagine how athletic that dude is.
Woo! Woo!
Also, is Nick Harbor going to be Alshon Jeffrey next year or what? Like, is he?
Oh
going to
my God, I
it
hope
out?
so.
Like,
Oh, please, dear God.
So big, so fast, so athletic. He's got to figure it out by next year.
If he's even Brian Edwards, I'm okay with that.
Sure, right? Sure. Oh, funny story about Brian Edwards, real quick. Okay. So I collect trading cards a bit, and I had picked up a box of cards when Brian Edwards was a rookie, and it had him in his college uniform. But what was funny about it is it was an autograph card, and he had signed both sides of it. So it was a really interesting kind of error card. I ended up selling it to a South Carolina fan a few years ago. But it was a pretty neat Brian Edwards connection.
Man, he was so good in college.
Yeah.
So good. Caught everything.
Yep. Never caught on in the NFL.
Nope.
Onward, upward, Illinois, Northwestern. Illinois takes care of business. Not a lot to take away from this game. Northwestern's not a good team. They've had a lot of tribulation there with the unionizing, with the Fitz, the Fitz stuff, and that sort of thing. But I think Illinois should chalk this season up to a success, in my opinion. I think they're on the right path. I think they're trending in the right direction. They've got really good leadership, and you can't really be upset. You stumbled a little bit, in weeks kind of 10, 11, 12, but other than that, Illinois was a pesky fucking rock, as you called it, rock fighting team. And they won a lot of games by controlling the tempo and playing with their style.
Yeah, 100%. They did the same thing in this game. They just were that much better, right? I didn't expect them to score 38 because they're not a high scoring offense, but like Northwestern's just that bad.
Yeah, Northwestern's it's a tough go, and it's going to be a tough go for a few years for them while they recover from a lot of kind of what's going on with that program. Unfortunate too, because like there was a time when they were arrow up. They put a quarterback in the NFL. They put a couple wide receivers in the NFL, a running back. Like they were putting dudes in the NFL that weren't just offensive and defensive linemen like we've seen in the past. So unfortunate that they're kind of trending in the backwards direction with that program. Maryland, Penn State. Maryland no-showed, much like Oklahoma State no-showed. I thought 24.5 was going to be too much. I fully expected Penn State to control this game and win it by like 17. I didn't expect them to win it by 20. What did that being 27 or whatever they ended up winning by, covering the 24.5. So big win by Penn State in terms of the spread. The biggest win of the weekend for them was Michigan beating Ohio State because now they get to play in the Big Ten championship against Oregon. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I don't want to jump ahead to that, but any real takeaways here from Week 14 with Penn State?
Another unranked win for Penn State to bring them to a grand total of 0 ranked wins on the season. So shout out to James Kiffin, the coach of Penn State. Bum, dude. Dumb program. Your jerseys suck, dude. Have a little creativity. Your whiteouts are lame because you never win those games. Not a real program, dude. They're fake program. Fake program.
Fake ass college program up there in Happy Valley.
Happy Valley, my ass.
Notre Dame, Southern Cal. Without the 2 pick sixes, I would have covered this number.
That's the dirtiest cover, dude. The dirtiest cover.
Fucking cover. It got ugly late, and SC was in this game. I've heard a lot of talk all week since this game from talking heads about like Notre Dame this and Notre Dame that, and they look really good and they look really great. And like, I'm sitting here listening to this, like, did you not watch this game? Like, legitimately speaking, Southern Cal should have won that game. Like, should have won that game outright. They didn't. They fucked it up late. Lincoln Riley's on the hot seat. I don't know if they're going to be willing to buy him out or not, but ugly, ugly cover at the end of this. I don't know if I'm a Notre Dame fan. I don't know if I look at this game and say, like, yeah, we're fucking ready for the playoff, man, especially with Bama looming.
Yeah. Southern Cal threw 199 yards worth of pick sixes on back-to-back drives inside of 4 minutes and still scored a touchdown after that.
Yes.
They were going in to potentially take the lead with under 4 minutes to go and then throw 2 pick sixes. But still, again, that's not even the takeaway. The takeaway is they still drove down and scored another touchdown. Like, they still were able to move the ball with their, second or I think he's the second quarterback to play for them this year.
Yeah.
Like, I'm nervous if I'm Notre Dame, man.
By the way, why didn't they make a move at quarterback earlier in the year? I know they didn't really have a guy on the roster that they're going to look at and say, like, that's the guy. But, like, Miller Moss was not good.
Not the guy.
All season.
Yep.
And you should have made a move in week 5 or something like that. Not that I think that they would have won a whole lot more games with the move, but, like, Miller Moss wasn't moving the fucking needle.
Right.
Jesus. Good Lord. Yeah, and I think what got exposed in this game is what we've talked about a bit. Notre Dame don't play anybody.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about weak strength of schedule? They lost to Northern Illinois, and they beat a bunch of other fucking Northern Illinois. Like, I don't understand how Notre Dame is the number 6 team, like, in the country. Like, I wouldn't even be upset if Notre Dame wasn't fucking in the playoff. I know they're never going to not be in the playoff if they've got one loss, but, like, that's a dog shit schedule. That's a dog shit season against a dog shit schedule, losing to fucking Northern Illinois.
They are the 4th ranked team in the country and have the 57th ranked strength of schedule.
Yes. It's terrible. Terrible. Yep. I'm surprised it's even that high, to be honest. If Army wasn't fucking undefeated against everybody else, that strength schedule would be in the shitter.
There are, I was going to say this for the bracket, but sneak peek, there are 3 teams in the top 15 in the country who are both in the top 15 of strength of schedule and strength of record. You have Georgia. Wait, hold on, pause. Top 16 strength of schedule and strength of record. Because Georgia, 3rd strength of schedule, Bama, 16 strength of schedule, and South Carolina, 15th strength of schedule. In the top 15 ranking right now.
Yeah.
3.
Crazy.
Notre Dame, not on that list.
Notre Dame. No, not at all. Onward, upward. The big upset of the weekend here. No, not really. I mean, Ohio State, Michigan is still that game. But
yes,
Cuse, man, great finish. I said at the beginning of the season that the schedule lined up nicely for them, and they took care of business for the most part. And then they laid 3 eggs this year, especially laid an egg against Pitt in that fucking 6 interception, 3 of them for pick sixes, I believe, or 4. It might even been 4 defensive scores in that game. Just a miserable performance there, but, like, the loss to Stanford was a tough one to swallow as well. Like, that's a game you should have easily won. This Syracuse team could legitimately be sitting here right now talking about playing either in the ACC championship game or potentially playing in a playoff game had they not laid those eggs and taken care of business against inferior opponents. In my opinion, Pitt's the one that you could probably convince me Pitt is on the same level as Syracuse, but you're not going to convince me that the other 2 losses are games they shouldn't have expected to win. BC and Stanford, both tight games that they lost as well. But what a fucking feather in the cap to finish the season for Fran Brown and company. Kyle McCord looked like a really good quarterback in this game. Oronde Gadsden Jr., if you hadn't known about him yet before week 14, dude's a monster. And I don't think there's any way we see him playing next year at they changed the name. I'm still going to call it the Carrier Dome. But I'd love to see him come back one more year because he's that good, but he's going to be catching passes in the NFL from an NFL quarterback next season, potentially changing the trajectory of an offense. He's fucking so good. He's so goddamn good. I mean, his dad played wide receiver, right? So like it's in his genes. He has wide receiver athleticism in like a huge tight end's body. Like he's a monster. But big time game. We talked about it. Miami's defense, not great. Syracuse drove up and down the field repeatedly on them. And when the game mattered, Dan Lanning filled his shoes again. As Dan or not, Jesus
not
Christ.
Dan Lanning,
not Dan Lanning,
Mario Cristobal.
Mario Cristobal. I always mix those two. I don't know why. Well, I guess the Oregon connection, but Mario Cristobal filled his shoes as he is wont to do at times. Looking at you, no victory formation against Georgia Tech last year. But yeah, like great game by Syracuse. This is one of those. I mentioned it with South Carolina against Clemson, where you end a season with a win like this. And that's momentum for recruiting, right? You go into the recruiting season, transfer portal, and the beginning of next year's recruiting cycle, and you say, hey, we beat Miami and knocked them out of the playoff, right? You didn't just beat Miami. You knocked them out of the playoff, potentially, because they are out of the playoff now, unless weird things happen this weekend. They are out of the playoff now because of that loss to Syracuse. So that's a feather in the cap. I love it. I love what Fran Brown's doing. I love that Syracuse football is relevant for the first time since Donovan McNabb was there. There's been
Greg Paulus played quarterback there.
I was going to say there've been a couple of flashes in the pan since then, but really looking at a top 25 finish to the season would be phenomenal for a school that is, for all intents and purposes, a basketball school. Ever since really like Jim Brown and Ernie Davis was kind of the last time Syracuse could really just say, we're a football school. Jim Boeheim changed the trajectory of the basketball program there, and it's been a basketball school since. So it's great to actually be able to watch Syracuse football that matters at the end of the season. I usually get about 3 weeks into a season, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll catch them if they're on, but I'm not going to go out of my way. So it's nice to be able to watch meaningful games for the Orange.
What was going through your mind when it was 21-0 Miami?
I'm going to be eating my words next Wednesday.
Okay.
It was it was just such a weird start to the game too. Like the offense was just like flat. Miami's offense was playing well, and it wasn't the Miami that we usually see, right? Like Miami typically is the slow start and catch up late.
Mm-hmm.
This was kind of the opposite, and then a couple quick scores, and you're like, oh fuck, are we in this thing? Like maybe we got a chance here. And then it got real interesting. The end of that game was exciting as fuck.
Yeah.
Going up and down the field, both teams, and then obviously making the stop on third down that forced Cristobal's decision, an ill-advised decision, to kick the field goal because you hadn't made a stop since about midway through the first quarter. You hadn't made a fucking stop.
Yep.
So yeah, that it didn't look good early for sure. Again, hats off to Fran Brown and company for staying the course. When you're down 21-0, it's easy to go into a shell.
Yeah, you talked about the no victory formation last year to Georgia Tech. That's a coaching issue, right?
Yep. Similar
coaching issues are outside of like in between play penalties, right? Because that shows undisciplined. There was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty called on that drive where Miami was forced to kick the field goal.
Yep.
That backed them up to first and goal, or I guess second and goal from the 8. And then they had second and goal from Syracuse 23. And that unsportsmanlike penalty on the offensive lineman for Miami is really what kind of changed the trajectory of that game that forced them to kick that field goal, and they never got the ball back.
Yep.
I mean, that's that. You put that squarely on the coaching, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yep.
Not great.
Sure. Yeah. Dead ball penalties are bonehead penalties that do, I agree, fall back on coaching. All right. Onward. SMU takes care of business against Cal. Ho-hum. That offense is fucking screaming into the ACC championship game. They take care of traditional ACC powerhouse Cal. Big time zone travel. This is going to be a problem, I think, for the foreseeable future until these schools figure out like what the NFL does and they just travel a couple days early. I don't know how schools are going to manage that with class and chartering flights and stuff like that, but it's it's a challenge. And you come into you come into Dallas and you play SMU, and they're already a good team, and you've got to travel a couple of time zones, not quite as many time zones as you would if you were going to like a Miami, but it's clearly an issue for these conferences that have merged coasts. I know the water all touches, but the coastlines do not.
I mean, technically, the
well,
land
that's
it doesn't
fair.
stop.
That's
It
fair.
doesn't stop.
Down what's the cape at the bottom of South America? That's where they touch.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. That's actually the median point. If you're going from Cal to SMU, you have to go down.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the way down to Argentina and back up.
Yeah. It's a rigorous travel schedule. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, look, SMU looks good, man, and we're gonna go watch them this weekend.
Yep. Number one SMU fan, Kevin Jennings has that offense, like you said, screaming up and down the field. They might be the most efficient offense in college football now that North Texas and Army and Navy have all kind of dropped off a little bit. They're super fun to watch. I'm really excited to watch them just steamroll Clemson. At least that's what I hope. Kevin Jennings, you're not Lenore Sellers, but you might be close. Yeah, ho-hum, they handle business. They're walking into an ACC title game. Did you know, Gary, that we have a chance for the Power Four conferences to all have brand new schools win? Yeah. I don't know if I love that, but
it's interesting, though.
It is interesting.
Arizona State, SMU, Texas, and Oregon all have a chance to win it as new entrants, and they're all going to play existing entrants in the championship game as well. So it could be like an official changing of the guard with regards to these Power Four conferences.
It'd be a real shame if Clemson were to just suck.
Yeah.
Be a real shame. I'd hate that.
Real shame. Bama Auburn. Bama ends up separating from Auburn here. I thought Auburn was going to keep it close in a rivalry game, but Alabama ends up covering the 11.5. I don't know really what to take away from this because Auburn's been a Jekyll and Hyde team all year. Alabama didn't look especially dominant necessarily in this game, but they took care of business in a rivalry game, Iron Bowl. A little bit of a stamp at the end of the season, I guess. Especially a weird season for Bama.
Yeah. They got back to the run Jalen Milroe left, run Jalen Milroe right. 17 carries, 100+ yards.
Yep.
That's the Bama we know.
That's the formula. He's not a guy, and I said this about Anthony Richardson, and I said last night on the show, Anthony Richardson's looked better the last 2 weeks since he came back from the benching. He's still very ineffective as a real kind of pocket passer, but he can be a little bit of a playmaker. Milroe is that, but worse, I think. Some GM is going to make a mistake when Jalen Milroe, who is maybe the most athletic guy in the country, right? With regards to his ability to beat you with all the tools. He's got a strong arm, fast, strong. He's going to jump out of the building because he's just a super athlete. He's going to go to the combine and press somebody in his underwear, and a GM is going to make a mistake and make him a top 10 pick. And I just he's not a guy who's going to be able to drop back and beat you from the pocket, and you have to win from the pocket in the NFL.
Yep.
But they have figured it out at times in the second half of this season, and I wonder if they're going to be able to stay with it in the playoff, or if they're going to be stubborn and try to pass the ball when the playoff comes. But that formula has worked for them a couple of times here down the stretch. Let's see. Arizona State, Arizona. Fucking Arizona no-showed here too. A lot of no-shows in rivalry week that was very surprising. Arizona State, though, I don't want to take anything away from them. Arizona no-showed, but Arizona State might be playing the best football in the country right now. They are fucking hot as fish grease. I know. The boys in Columbia are playing the best football in the country right now. But Arizona State's hot, man. They are playing very, very well. They are beating teams up. And I know it's Big 12 opponents. Take that with a grain of salt for what it's worth. But Arizona State looks really, really good right now. and they've got a chance to win the title and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, something about that premature rushing of the field really helped this offense click into lockstep there,
Yeah.
Ladies, do with that information what you will. But
Yeah.
you mentioned they're playing incredible ball. Scatabo is running all over everybody. Sam Levitt has really elevated his game at the quarterback position. They're loving life out there in the desert, and I can't blame them because Tempe is a wonderful place to be, especially this time of year. Credit to them, dude. They look incredible. They absolutely crushed their brethren from Tucson, who, we missed you, Jed Fish, but yikes.
Yeah.
They
might want to come back after his season in fucking Washington.
Right? Yeah, for real. He's like, this Big Ten thing, not for me.
Yeah, I want to go back to Tucson.
Yeah. No, I would be worried if I were Iowa State. I'll tell you that. I would be worried.
Yeah.
Because Iowa State is playing a win and in game this weekend, and Arizona State looks real good.
Yes, they do, for sure. Mizzou, Arkansas. Mizzou takes care of business. I don't know what's going to happen with this Arkansas program going forward, but they really their good looked good and their bad looked really bad this season. But Mizzou, we continue to talk about how much we like what's going on up there in the other Columbia. Good win to end the season for them. They had a legitimate shot about halfway through the season to stake a claim to maybe being a playoff team. Didn't work out. Brady Cook with his injury was really the big difference for that team. But nice way to finish the season here.
Yeah, there was a nail put in that coffin, I think.
Yes, there was.
I think that Dylan Stewart might have had something to do with it. Maybe Kyle Kennard, a couple of Gamecocks hammering in the nails there. But yeah, still, I still say error up for Missouri. Arkansas had an interesting recruit commit today. Madden Iamaliava, Nico's younger brother, committed to play quarterback at the University of Arkansas.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be playing for Sam Pittman or if he's going to be playing for Bobby Petrino,
or neither.
Neither, yeah, maybe. Who knows? Credit to Missouri though, man. You talked about the Brady Cook injury being really a gut punch for them. They lost 38-0 or whatever it was to Alabama. With the backup there, Drew Pine. But shout out to them for coming back. Brady Cook coming back, fighting through the end of the season and having a nice win. Now they'll get a bowl game. I don't know who's going to play in that bowl game. I would assume Johnny Walker Jr. is not going to play in that bowl game.
Luther Burden
probably not.
Cleared.
Yeah, they're going to be down some guys in the bowl game, but Eli Drinkwitz, take your visor and tip it to somebody.
For sure. Indiana. I took 29 points with Purdue. That wasn't even enough to cover halfway.
Nope.
66-0. This felt like two things. This felt like Coach Sig put his foot on the pedal against an in-state rival who he used to rile up the crowd at his introduction on campus.
Yep.
And also, Indiana wanted to make sure that there was no questions from the CFP that they could find a way to exclude Indiana from the playoff. Put some fucking respect on a 66-0 drubbing of an albeit terrible Purdue program right now. It's a mess. It's a mess. And I don't know how much light is at the end of the tunnel for the boys up there in West Lafayette, but the boys in Bloomington decided to just hammer down on the Boilermakers.
67 total yards of offense for Purdue in that game.
Yeah.
There's a clip going around of Drew Brees on the sideline at the Texas A&M game, and he was dapping up Johnny Manziel, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I've always wanted to be an Aggie." Literally, as the Indiana-Purdue game was still happening. Like, it was still going on. And Drew Brees is wearing a Texas A&M shirt on the sideline. Like, I wanted to be an Aggie, brother. It's sad, scary hours over there at West Lafayette, man.
Yeah. It's troubling. It's troubling. I got a buddy who's a big Boilermakers fan too, and
Oof,
I feel bad. Feel bad for him. He grew up
that's
around
tough.
West Lafayette, and
That's tough.
it's tough up there. Oregon, Washington. Oregon took care of business here. Washington down year. I thought the only thing that worried me was the potential for a look-ahead game here because Oregon had locked up Big Ten championship. Oregon basically locked up the fact that if they go win that Big Ten championship game, they'll have a bye, maybe be the 1 seed, even with 1 loss. But they took care of business here. Didn't let the Big Ten championship distract them from the rivalry game here against Washington.
Yep, Oregon's just really good, man.
Yep.
They're really good.
Super talented team. Texas A&M. I thought Texas easily could have won this game. I thought this game was going to come down to a kick. That's why I took the 5.5 points with A&M. Marcel Reed showed exactly why he didn't win the starting job in the preseason in this game. He looked really bad. He looked out of sorts. That Texas front, despite losing 2 defensive tackles to the NFL, got after him relentlessly during this game, and he never could shake it. He had an ankle, I think, at some point during this game because he was a bit compromised, limping at times. But he couldn't find receivers. He couldn't get out of the pocket and actually make plays. That Texas defense was flying all over the field. They were not going to let an opportunity slip away. First time playing this team in over a decade, and the SEC championship game carrot dangling in front of them. They took care of business, man, and beat up on Texas A&M a bit. I know Raul's out there smiling somewhere too.
This game could easily have been like 31-7. Yeah. Like the only reason A&M was in this game was because Texas turned it over twice in plus territory. This is the only reason this game was close. Texas dominated this game, and it wasn't like I know the box score is not super impressive, but if you watch this game, A&M had nothing going. Yeah. Nothing.
It was never close. I was looking at it with the 5.5 number. I'm like, fuck, this defense is going to have to score at least once, maybe twice.
Yeah. Yep.
Ugh, never happened. Kansas State, Iowa State. I thought this game was going to come down to a kick as well. I thought they were a tightly matched game here. Iowa State separated a bit from Kansas State. Kansas State's up and down season continued. We'll see what they can do going forward with Avery Johnson and how they're going to build around him. But great season from Iowa State, man. And Iowa State leaves the non-10 win season crew. Vanderbilt is the only remaining team without a 10-win season in major college football. So we'll see if they can get off the schneid here in the coming years. But there were 3 to start the season, and now there is only 1. Vanderbilt's the last on that list. Great season from Iowa State, though, man. They can run the ball. They can control the clock. They're going to have to do a lot of that against Arizona State if they're going to beat them the way they're playing football right now. But great season, great finish, and they've got another game to look forward to.
Yeah, certainly. Kansas State,
BYU to thank, because if BYU had lost that game, Colorado was going to sneak into the Big 12 championship.
Yep. Yeah, and BYU tried to for about half.
They really did.
Yeah, I the K-State thing, man. I was out on them at the beginning, and then Avery Johnson kind of won me over. And then I was kind of out on them again. And like this game, if they don't fumble twice, maybe they win. You know, it's like they're confounding. I'll tell you that. But credit to Iowa State, dude. That 3-headed monster they got at running back, dude. They just circle those guys in and out. And any one of them can get hot on any given night. And they can run the ball up and down the field. I'll tell you that. And Rocco Beck is a pretty good quarterback. He's not great, but like he's a pretty good quarterback, and he runs that system well.
Yeah. He's a pretty good college quarterback.
Yeah.
It's a college scheme.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to beat Arizona State, not to spoil my pick, but credit to them, 10 wins. That's nothing to shake a stick at.
Yep. Yeah, they joined Indiana as part of the crew that got off that 10-win schneid this year, leaving the boys in Nashville to rue their their program's history.
Should it be Tennessee?
Should have beat Tennessee. UNLV Nevada, kind of a ho-hum. This is a rivalry only because they're in-state. This isn't necessarily one that really registers on the national radar, but UNLV is in the Mountain West Conference championship game. If they'd have dropped this game, they'd have been in trouble out there in the Mountain West. They win the opportunity to go deal with Ashton Genty with a pretty comfortable win over the Wolfpack.
Yep.
And to finish the week out here, Houston, BYU, and as you said, like BYU tried to give this fucking thing away. Houston is just not good enough to take advantage of a team like BYU giving them opportunities. They gave them opportunities early, they gave them opportunities late, and Houston wasn't able to really overcome. BYU kind of bum rushed them in the middle portion of this game.
Yeah.
And then Houston just couldn't keep up once the ice started to tilt on them.
Yeah, it was a one-score game with 8 minutes to go, 8.5 minutes to go. It's like there were stops on both sides of the ball going back and forth for the last 8.5 minutes, and then BYU got one late to kind of extend it. So the game was a little closer than the score actually looks.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it. Houston just was not good enough to take advantage of the mistakes on the BYU side.
Yep, for sure. All right, well, that wraps up the top 25 portion. As is tradition, I want to throw it your way. You got anything off the board from last week that you want to highlight?
Man, do I have one off the board? Navy got back on the horse, scored 34 points.
Yeah.
They looked pretty good against East Carolina. The Texas State game, they scored 83 points combined. Yep. So if you took the over, yep. As is tradition in this show's history, we like to find the overs that start with 6s and 7s and play those heavily. So that worked out for us. Off the board, I had one. Where did it go? Oh, Texas Tech killed Neil Brown and West Virginia. Neil Brown, the guy coming into last season who was in the hot seat, and then they won 8 games and he saved his job. Well, they lost 52-15 this weekend, and Neil Brown has now been fired from the University of West Virginia. I know one commissioner in a league that would be willing to take that job over, but that's an online dynasty joke for those that don't get it. It's really just as you would be the only one that understood that, but he does not like playing against teams that throw the ball deep.
No.
Yeah, Texas Tech, guns up, baby. Shout out to them. And then Kansas kind of fell back to earth, unfortunately for them. They got crushed by Baylor. Excuse me. Sorry, the name escaped me there.
Yep.
Oh, and Florida killed Florida State. So another rivalry game, another flag planted. Which, by the way, all the people that are like, oh, it's dumb, they shouldn't do this, like, it's bad sportsmanship. Like, no. This weekend is what makes college football the best. All right? All the weekends are great. I love it. You love it. We all love college football. But this weekend, when you can just mindlessly go out to the 50-yard line and start a brawl, like, that's awesome. Because there's so much hatred between these programs. It's the best. It really is the best.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like, more of the blame, I think, for that whole situation lies with Ohio State and kind of how it was handled, and in the visual of Ryan Day on the sideline just looking like lost, like, and then looking at his player and being like, what happened? Like,
yeah,
it's a bad look, bro.
It is.
And then they've got to get the pepper spray and things got out of hand, but I don't want to stop the flag planting thing, but, like, if you're throwing fists over it, get over it. You had 60 minutes to beat that team. You had 60 minutes to stop them from planting a flag at midfield, and you didn't. Move on, right? Go to the locker room. But it is what it is.
Yeah, or just like shove them a little bit and like make it fun. You know,
you don't have to throw a punch, right? Like,
right?
Tell them stop, whatever. Tempers flare, but I don't know. I'm cool with it though. I'm with you. Storm the field, plant the flag. It's what makes college fun. Just don't try to hurt people. That's all.
No, obviously, you shouldn't be going out with malice intent. Yeah. But if you want to go out there and push and shove and yell in each other's face,
Sure.
I'm all for it, dude.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. All right, before we transition into our championship week picks, I want to talk a little CFP, and then we're going to talk about one Civil War captain who has returned to his alma mater. But first, let's talk CFP. So we've got the breakdown here of the 5 conference champions that includes Boise State out of the Mountain West currently. And then our at-larges, we've got Georgia, we've got Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Tennessee. Who am I missing? I should have pulled up the bracket. I tried to go off the cuff here.
Oh, the bracket?
Yeah, I'm trying to talk about the 12 teams that are currently in.
Why does ESPN not just have this available?
Yeah, I'm blanking here. Who am I missing? The two other. Oh, Penn State and Indiana. Bracket. Penn State and Indiana are the other two. So that's our 12-team field currently, the 5 champions and those 7 at-larges. I want to ask you, because I have some thoughts, but I want to ask you what your biggest gripe is about the current college football playoff bracket field, right? What's your number one gripe? And you can be a homer. I'm cool with it. But talk to me about like your biggest gripe right now with the field.
Well, I mean, I kind of alluded to it with the like Carolina beating Clemson on the road and moving up only 1 spot, but Georgia somehow moving up 2 spots after going to 8 overtimes against an unranked team at home. Like, my biggest gripe is that we just don't know, man. Like, we were talking about this, we were texting about this, and I was like, yeah, they're just chasing the money. Yep. And, like, for the most part, that's true, right? But they also, and I think you probably had the same gripe, like, the chairman came out and was like, yeah, basically this weekend doesn't matter.
Yep.
Like, teams that are not playing this weekend cannot be moved. And I'm like, well, why is that the case, right? So you're telling me that you're telling me that I pull up the standings here or I pull up the rankings here. If Penn State, who has a loss to Ohio State, who's not playing conference championship weekend, if they lose to Oregon, like, why can't they be bumped down? Like, you're not moving players who are not playing this weekend up, but you said as well that you're not going to punish teams for losing this weekend. Like, why is Penn State not able to move down if they lose this weekend? Because that would give them a second loss. Like, why not put Miami in? If all of those two, like if Miami's record and Penn State's record are equal, like, move Indiana up over Penn State and then move Miami into the playoff. I don't like what them coming out and saying that they're not making changes based off of this weekend is asinine. And the only changes they would be able to make are based off of conference championship winners. So, like, what happens if Clemson wins? Does SMU get dropped out completely? Do they get punished for losing a championship game when you said this week they're very clearly worthy of being in because you made them a fucking 8 seed?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I guess I know that doesn't have to do with this week's bracket and where the numbers lined up, but my gripe is with the committee. It's not even with the bracket. Like, if they think those are the 12 best teams, that's fine, but there's no transparency as to why they think those are the 12 best teams.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That is my biggest gripe, really, because typically in the past with the CFP, the final rankings, we've had a lot of conversation about, like, who's playing the best football, who's got the best resume, who's got the best body of work, right? And kind of in that order is how we tried to get to the 4 best teams. And it doesn't feel like we're doing that with trying to get to the 12 best teams. I think the big factor in all of this is the 5 champion thing. And I think that's got to go away. Because as I mentioned earlier, you can't tell me that championship games don't matter, but then in the same sort of criteria tell me that they do.
Right.
Because conference champions being guaranteed a spot in the playoff means that the conference championship games matter. But you telling me that teams aren't going to move based on results of this weekend is trying to say that the championship games don't matter. And I hate that. I look at it this way of like, if Clemson beats SMU, again, that should make South Carolina's win over Clemson a big deal. If Georgia goes and loses to Texas, Bama didn't beat a conference champion, but South Carolina did.
Yeah.
So that should be a criteria in my opinion. And and we can go down the list and work on racking and stacking, but in the end, it really does feel like the CFP committee just doesn't have like a real guidepost for how they're measuring the criteria for who gets in. And we talked about it when the first rankings came out. They're trying to get people talking. They're trying to get people to click on the articles and discuss it on the big shows and ESPN and everybody else. And we talk about it on the show.
Sure.
But it always shook out in the end, right? We always got to a place at the end of the season where the committee came out and said, we measured this, 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 and this is why these were the 4 teams that were in the playoff, and this is why these 2 teams or 3 teams or 4 teams that we had kind of, the first teams out, why they were the first teams out. Florida State last year, we could point to a specific criteria of why they were left out, and Bama ended up getting in, right? It was Jordan Travis, one of the best players in college football last year, was a huge difference maker for them. He gets hurt, and you can point to that as a specific criteria. They are no longer one of the 4 best teams in the country because they lost maybe the most important player in college football last year. And I say that because his injury cost them a spot in the playoff. So from an importance perspective, you could point to that. Strength of schedule, strength of record, like those things mattered when it was 4 teams. It doesn't feel like those things matter anymore with 12 teams. I think we could end up using this year as a learning opportunity for future years, wherein by that I mean that the committee can look at this year and say, we didn't really have a good set of criteria to get to the 12 best teams in the country. We've got to take a round turn on that. I don't know if the conferences are going to sign off on it, but I really dislike the 5 guaranteed spots because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think Boise State is one of the 12 best teams in the country. I just don't think that Boise State, if you line them up on the field against the other 12 teams in the top 13, I don't know how many of them I would really give them a chance to win on a neutral field, right? But I understand that the conferences want to have a say, and I get that, but I also disagree with it. So we'll see in the future. Andy Staples had an interesting take. He was on Dan Patrick Monday or whatever. He was on Dan Patrick recently, and he said he thinks they're going to 14 teams next year, so that they can balance the 5 guaranteed spots, which could balloon to 6 with the Pac-12 coming back if they really wanted to put an emphasis on championship games, but also to be able to make sure that they can get brands and more games, less buys, more games on campus. So we'd go down to 2 buys and 2 more teams would host a game in the first round on their campus. Schools see it as a way to make money. And I trust Andy Staples because he's usually really keen on breaking stuff with the college game.
Yeah.
Long diatribe over. I don't understand how we got to this 12 teams in this penultimate CFP rank. Actually, it is the last ranking. Next one is the actual selection.
Yeah. So to your point there of the injury stuff, right? We already know that the committee does not care about timeline, right? They don't care when you lost to a team. It's that you lost to that team, right? Because, and I'm going to speak from a second line perspective here. I'm not trying to be a homer, but I'm making the case for them because they're one of the 3 teams that were fighting for that last spot, right? Injury concern last year, Jordan Travis not able to play in the playoffs, so they said, hey, you're out. Well, guess what? South Carolina, in a game where they lost because of the referees, which is not a term, like not a phrase I say lightly. The LSU game was stolen away from them by the referees. In that game, in the second half, Lenore Sellers didn't play because he was injured.
Yeah.
So you've already told me you don't care about timelines, right? So whenever that game occurred, doesn't matter. That could have happened this weekend or like it did back in fucking September. Why are we getting dinged because we had an injury to the most important player on our offense?
Yep.
If you're saying that injuries matter and you're taking that into account, why would you not take it into account the other way, right? Like, oh, they didn't have their quarterback, so we're going to value that loss less than we would if he was playing. You know what I'm saying? If we come out and get absolutely smoked like we did against Ole Miss,
Yeah.
then I could understand it. But like, I just don't. That makes no sense to me, right? Like last year, you used the injury concern. Why not use it this season? You know. And then to your point of the conference championships matter and beating a conference champion, South Carolina beat Clemson. Let's say Clemson goes on and wins this weekend. Awesome. Carolina should probably move up, right? That would just make sense. Let's say Georgia goes out and beats Texas this weekend. Well, guess who beat Georgia? Ole Miss and Alabama. Guess who would not then have a win over a ranked opponent or a win against conference champion? Texas. What do you do with Texas? They played fucking nobody this year except for Georgia, where they got dog walked by two scores at home. Yep. Like, if Georgia wins and you're telling me that you do, in fact, value conference championships, and Clemson wins and you're telling me you do, in fact, value conference championships, and Oregon wins and you tell me you do, in fact, value conference championships, you have to then bump SMU, bump Texas, bump Penn State, put in South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama, who's already in. But, you know, you get what I'm saying, right?
Yep.
If you were trying to ride the pine,
Clemson would then move in.
Exactly. Clemson would get the automatic bid. So, like, if you were telling me that you absolutely value winning a conference championship so much that it gets you an automatic bid into the college football playoff, it should matter that a team beats that conference champion in the regular season. In which case, like I said, take Penn State out, take Texas out, and take SMU out because they have not beaten a conference champion and they now have an extra loss on their schedule. Put in the teams that have beaten, those conference champions.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Never going to happen, but
I agree that it's not going to happen also. But I agree with you 100%. Like, you can't tell me out of one side of your mouth that conference championships matter, and then on the other side of your mouth try to tell me that they don't matter.
Yeah.
So I'm with you 100%. Who of the teams currently scheduled to host a playoff game in the first round, who's your most susceptible to a loss? I think I made it clear who my most susceptible was earlier in Notre Dame. I don't think I picked Notre Dame over any of the at-large teams. Honestly, I don't think I picked them over any of the at-large teams.
Okay, let's see. Oh my God, why can I not just find a clean bracket, dude? Everything's ad blocked. ESPN doesn't have one.
I should have made an overlay for it.
I just don't understand why I can't find a clean photograph of it. I'll find one here and then I'll tell you.
So you would have Tennessee playing Ohio State. You'd have Arizona State playing Penn State. You'd have Alabama playing Notre Dame and Indiana playing Georgia. The second team in all of those is the home team. So which of those four would be the most susceptible, you think?
Okay, so we get the higher state. So Tennessee at Ohio State.
Yep. Arizona State at Penn
State. Yeah.
At Notre Dame.
And okay, so you said Notre Dame, so I won't go Notre Dame.
Would you pick Notre Dame if I hadn't?
Yeah, I would. But honestly, Penn State, man.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't played anyone.
Their fucking history.
Yeah, like, they should have gotten crushed by Ohio State, right? We talked about that game earlier. They got lucky that score was as close as it was.
Yep.
And you talked about it, and I co-signed. Arizona State's playing incredible ball, man. Yep. Scatabo might run up in Happy Valley and make it Sad Valley real quick. Like,
you might.
Beaver Stadium, we're breaking that down.
Bruiser, man. That's a big bruiser.
Yeah. So I aside from Notre Dame, I think that probably Penn State is the most susceptible to an at-home upset, especially if they make it a whiteout. Because good Lord.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we'll shift gears. We'll get off the CFP. Let's talk about Captain Andrew Luck. For those of you who don't know, that is a social media handle that writes some of the most fantastic content on the internet. But Andrew Luck, the real life Andrew Luck, is returning to his alma mater at Stanford. He's been kind of off the radar, made a couple of appearances, one at a Super Bowl, recently in terms of like any sort of TV time. He just kind of disappeared after retirement. He's been coaching at Palo Alto High School, the Vikings. I found that out today. That is their mascot. He was on Dan Patrick today, talking, or maybe it was yesterday, and I was listening to the episode today. He is going back as the general manager of the football program at Stanford. One, are you excited to know that Andrew Luck is back in football? And two, do you think having a guy like Andrew Luck associated with the football program will help them kind of right the ship and become a player in the Atlantic Coast Conference?
I don't think that. So obviously he's back in football, right? He's the general manager, but you just talked about how he disappeared after retiring. I don't think we're gonna have Andrew Luck like back in our life. I don't really see him being the forward-facing general manager of that program. It's not the NFL, right? There are other programs that have general man. Can you name me another general manager in college football? Right? It just so happens this one is Andrew Luck. It's still a head coach-driven program, right? Or sport, I guess would be the proper term there. It's cool. It's awesome for Stanford. Like it might swing a couple recruits. He may be able to go out there and tell the story of how he had no offensive line to speak of in the NFL, and maybe tell them to focus on recruiting offensive linemen at Stanford. But like, let's be honest here. You go to Stanford and you're on a recruiting visit. What's more exciting, seeing Andrew Luck there or seeing Christian McCaffrey? Like, probably Christian McCaffrey, if I had to guess, is the cooler like recruit attraction. But
probably more fun to party with too.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You think his wife and her friends are going to show up? Or
Excellent reference.
Please don't hurt me, Christian. Big fan, dude. Big fan. I think it's cool. It's awesome for that program. I don't know that it moves the needle, if I'm being completely honest. He's a beloved figure at Stanford. I know that. I don't really think it does anything for the program, like big picture. But it is cool because we get the Captain Andrew Luck Twitter handle back activated, which is just one of the purest
gold,
just best forms of social media comedy that there is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. Like it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing. It's always fun to kind of hear Andrew Luck talk because he's on a different plane than a lot of like football players are. But yeah, I don't know how much it moves the needle for the program, but it is a cool thing. And I would guess that recruits visiting and meeting Andrew Luck and hearing about how he retired immediately after they drafted maybe the best offensive lineman of his generation. Would be a fun story to tell. He had a lacerated kidney before Quentin Nelson arrived, and then he retired right after playing his first season with Quentin Nelson up front.
Yep.
All right, let's transition into championship week, man. So we open the week with Mountain West Conference championship game, Boise State, UNLV. Spread's only 4. I think this has a lot to do with 2 factors. 1, how UNLV played them earlier in the year, and 2, how UNLV is playing good football right now down the stretch. UNLV had gotten into the top 25, and then Syracuse knocked them out. UNLV's been playing good enough football that they're back in the top 25 and in the picture here against Boise State. We're both on Boise State -4. How comfortable are you to say that Boise is definitely going to win this game, or is UNLV going to play the way they played earlier in the year and give themselves a chance to win in this game?
No, I'm on Boise, man. I fully recognize that it is tough to beat a team twice in a season. Do you know where this game is being played, Gary?
Is this a home game? I thought I remembered that. It's a home game for them, right?
It's a home game for Boise.
Yeah.
UNLV plays football in a dome in the desert in Las Vegas.
Cold in Boise.
It's gonna be cold. You know who loves You know who loves the cold? Running backs.
Running backs.
You know who's a really, really good running back? Ashton Genty, baby.
Yeah, he's playing at home this week.
Yeah, I'm all over Boise. I know that the few times we've talked about UNLV on this program, I talked about Barry Odom being a very good defensive coach, which is still true.
Yep.
Haj Malik Williams, Ricky Waters, the third, couldn't get it done last time. Not counting on them to do it this time. They're fighting a literal uphill battle going into Boise this weekend.
Yeah.
Might be a snow game.
Could be a snow game.
Yeah. Yeah, give me Boise, man. I'm all over it. Give me Genty over 200 yards.
Woohoo!
Like I'm
in,
all
folks.
aboard. I'm all aboard.
we
will be watching this game. All
yes,
things hopeful, I guess. Yeah, as long as
traffic, we'll be watching.
Yeah, we will see this game together.
Yep, for sure. Tulane Army. Tulane's spotting 5. I'm going to take the points with Army because I think that offense has a chance to really give problems to Tulane. It's given problems to a lot of teams in the American this year, and I think it could give the same problems to Tulane. I also don't love what I saw from Tulane last week against an inferior Memphis team. I don't know that I'm going to pick Army outright. I might place a money line ticket just because it's a service academy, just for fun. But I think they're going to keep it close. Maybe Tulane wins this thing late, but give me the 5 points. I think this is going to be like a 3-point game.
Sure. I totally understand being leery of taking Tulane after seeing what Memphis was able to do running the ball against them. I think that they probably went home and watched a lot of tape of that game and figured out some things on the defensive side of the ball. Again, Mario Anderson, I watched a lot of his football last year at South Carolina. That kid is a good running back. The only reason he left is because Rocket came in this year. Otherwise, he would have been a starting running back in the SEC.
Yeah.
They don't have any of those guys at the service academies, unfortunately for them.
True.
So I'm gonna go back to the well one more time, man. I'm gonna lay the points with Tulane, and I'm gonna feel pretty good about it if I'm being honest.
Like it.
Although, do you know where this game is being played?
No. Oh, the American plays at the higher seeds place, right? They are at
West Point.
That's right. American does have the higher seed hosts. That's right.
So we have a team going from New Orleans
all the way up to cold New York.
Yep. Nala to upstate, baby. That's a tough transition.
Yeah, I can vouch for how cold it gets up there in New York.
Also, fun fact, just to bring it one more time back to the University of South Carolina.
Yes.
Tulane 93 against the spread this year. South Carolina also 93 against the spread.
Nice. Arizona State, Iowa State. Arizona State -2. This has a lot more to do with just the way Arizona State's playing right now than anything with Iowa State. Iowa State's had a great season. Arizona State's playing really, really good football right now.
Yeah. The matchup of the white running backs.
Yeah, right.
And I know that Iowa State has three running backs they play, and Abu Sama is probably the best one, and he's not white. But technically, their leading rusher on the year is a white guy. So we get Scadaboo versus Hansen.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we both talked about Arizona State's playing inspired football right now. As long as the sun does not shine in their eyes there at Jerry World Stadium, they should be okay.
What a disaster that fucking place is.
Well, just put up some blinds, Jerry. I don't understand.
Just close the curtains that you have.
True. Very true.
Onward, upward. Georgia, Texas. We both have Georgia plus the points. I'm going to ask you, is this a money line pick for you? Do you have Georgia beating Texas, or is this game just going to be that tight?
Yeah, Georgia's going to win this game.
Yeah, I think so too. They beat the shit out of them earlier this year. It is tough to beat a team twice in a year.
Sure.
But yeah, I just that was such a non-competitive game when Georgia played Texas earlier this year. I just don't know. I'm sorry, Raul. I
So,
just don't. I don't know that Texas can turn it around enough to overcome what we watched Georgia do to them.
so my reasoning is a little. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, right? I just have other points of interest, right? Carson Beck, we have talked about it over and over again, has thrown 12 interceptions this season. Do you know how many interceptions Quinn Ewers has thrown off the top of your head?
I know he's in double digits.
Not quite. Not
Oh,
quite.
really?
He has 7.
7? Is it that
but
low?
He missed like 3 games.
Oh, I thought he had like 10 or 11 or something like that. But no.
Yeah. So
Oh, shit.
This feels like a defensive struggle to me.
Yeah.
It's a pseudo home game they're playing in Atlanta, right, which is an hour and a half from Athens.
Yeah.
Very speedable roads.
They'll ride the bus that James Franklin doesn't want to ride.
Well, they better ride their bus because they're not allowed to drive themselves. It's only a 45-minute drive if you ask the players to drive themselves there.
Yeah.
But
let's avoid that.
It feels like a home game. I get that it's a super easy flight from Dallas to Atlanta, but you're just going to have more Georgia fans in the house than you will Texas fans. That's just facts. Kirby Smart, for all of the gripe that we've given him this year for having like a subpar kind of underperforming team, is a really, really good big game coach. And this is a big game. I know that they're not going to be knocked out of the playoff, but they could jump and get a bye if they win this game.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Oregon, Penn State. I'm going to take the points for Penn State, and I know that I'm going to hate myself for doing so. But I just Oregon has been one of those teams. I just can't put my finger on whether they're a team that's going to dominate everybody or not. And I'm going to say it again. This is the most talented team that James Franklin has had in his tenure at Penn State. I don't know if it's going to be enough to keep it close. I'm not picking them to win. I'm going to pick them to lose like 24-22. I'm going to take the points, and I'm going to hate myself next Wednesday when I have to come in here and say James Franklin burnt me again. But I'm going to take the points for Penn State. I'm not ballsy enough to pick them outright, though.
Gary, this is week 14 for us, 15 for us.
Yeah.
And then you add on all of last season to that.
Yeah.
Okay. You're gonna learn it. You're gonna learn at some point. That's fine.
Fucking nothing if not stubborn.
You're gonna learn. That's okay. You're gonna learn it. You will learn to listen to me when I tell you about football. Unless I'm wrong, in which case strike that from the record.
Yeah.
Give me Oregon. Give me all the points, man. I'm laying them all.
Yeah. Probably the right play. SMU Clemson. SMU's laying 2.5. I'm here to tell you that SMU is better than Clemson. I'm here to tell you that SMU is going to run the ball all over Clemson's defense. I would play an alternate line of 2 scores in this. 9.5. Give me 9.5. I would lay. I just think SMU is so good, and I don't trust Clemson's offense to be able to keep up.
I'm wearing my closest to SMU gear that I own. I don't own anything SMU, but I really hope that, or wish that I did, because I would also be rocking that. This is a game we're going to be in-house for, boots on ground, live reaction coming, multiple days later next Wednesday. But regardless,
we go live on Facebook.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that offense, dude, it's so efficient. I talked earlier about Clemson kind of bottling up the passing game for South Carolina this weekend. I love that South Carolina team. Love the South Carolina team. Our offense is not nearly as good as this SMU team. I promise you that. Our quarterback is better, but that might be about it, honestly. We don't operate at the same speed that they do, or nearly the same efficiency. So for that reason, I'm with you, man. Give me all the points. I'm laying them, dude. I'm laying all the laying, not giving. laying points with SMU.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we don't have a board to go off of this week because it is championship week. So, any closing thoughts as we close in on really the conclusion of the season, with the exception of our bowl season that we'll get to talk about here coming up soon?
It's been a blast, dude. I always love talking ball with you, getting on here, hanging out with the folks. Jury is still out as to whether or not college basketball starts tonight. I will be monitoring that situation very closely here in the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But it's exciting times. College football, it just doesn't disappoint, man. Every single Saturday is always so much fun. Even the Saturdays that we don't expect it to be great. What was it? October 5th? We were like, oh man, October 12th is the fucking day. And then
October 5th was a fucking monster weekend.
Yeah, it just feels like that every week, dude. Like there's always something happening. It's why college football, no matter what it looks like, you know what I mean? A super conference with divisions, or if we end up going back to the normal conferences we had last year or whatever, the games on the field are always going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yep. For sure, man. All right. Well, great episode, bud. For Bentley, for everybody here at Backyard Sports, this has been Tailgate Trash Talk, brought to you by Backyard Sports. Appreciate those in the comments. SJ, welcome to our other football show in the Backyard family. Appreciate the follow. Dad, comments, appreciate it. We will see you all next week when we talk about the final CFP selection, the upcoming bowl season, and conference champions.
Yes.
We are out.